Good morning. So my name is Mike Boyle from GlobalSign, and I'm going to give some insights into the business drivers that need to be considered by enterprises and service providers regarding cybersecurity. So just as an intro, cybersecurity is obviously a very broad and significant topic for people to consider. There are things like data integrity, transactions, and identities. And service providers are typically faced with a growing demand from enterprises to provide technologies and additions in their services that are able to allow enterprises to comply with the cybersecurity business drivers. So we could be talking verified identities, encryption, digital signing. So what we're going to go through today is the business drivers, but we have to give that context. Then we're going to go through some of the examples of business drivers, give examples of the technologies that can be used, and the options that we as GlobalSign offer to fulfill them. So context. The context of when we talk about business drivers is PKI-enabled business drivers, because the topic is otherwise very broad. So we're talking encryption of network connections and websites and data. We're talking about verified identities. And we're talking about digital signing of emails and documents. Certifying documents to add data integrity and authenticity. And non-repudiation, the inability to deny that who the user was that signed, and when they did that can be achieved through timestamping. So the business drivers are the driving forces behind why an enterprise wants to achieve something. This could be any of the following, from legislation to industry regulation, all the way through to corporate governance, which is an incredibly important topic. So, to give some examples of the types of legislation that needs to be considered, there's some laws that are general. One of such is the eIDAS legislation, the eIDAS regulations on electronic signatures. E-signature laws have been around since 1999 and are pretty much relevant across the world, which basically says an electronic signature should not be denied legal effect. It can be a representation of a handwritten signature. But it didn't ever clarify how, and in fact it was quite complex to prove or disprove who the user was when they signed something. It's also incredibly expensive as a legal process. But electronic signatures was just talking about legal effect and not actually about what happens in a document and how it can help in cybersecurity. So the definitions have now been changed. eIDAS has repealed the previous electronic signature directive and now seeks to set out clear message of why and how and what digital certificate-based signatures are versus standard electronic signatures. The legal effect still remains the same. All electronic signatures still can be considered as legal effect. But the certificate-based signatures, digital certificate-based signatures, as GlobalSign provide, can be used for a much higher level because it adds identity and verification and authenticity to a signature. These are called advanced electronic signatures. So the result is, as I said, electronic signatures are still permissible, but eIDAS is seeking to become more ubiquitous and ensure that services can migrate over to a certificate-based signature to include identity. Because without it, there's no proof of authenticity. Cybersecurity then exists, and there will be hacks and man-in-the-middle attacks and people pretending to be other people because of the system. More services are falling under these eIDAS regulations: banking, mobile, desktop, retail banking, conveyancing, and more industries. Another example of legislation is data protection. So we have the Data Protection Act currently in process. But General Data Protection Regulation, GDPR, is about to replace it come May 2018. And it's a game changer for the industry. It's a game changer for cybersecurity because the rules are much stricter and based on a higher level of consent by the user. The premise behind it is the GDPR will force companies to encrypt data. That is an incredibly important thing because data has to be made unintelligible. That means data leaks that we hear about in the news all the time become less. And it means that companies can now operate in a way that even if they were to suffer an attack, their users' data is protected. The penalties are severe. Under DPA, the current penalties, the highest penalty a company can receive for failure to protect user data is £500,000. The new rules make it 4% of annual worldwide turnover or 20 million euro, whichever is higher. So you can see this is an actual game changer if companies do not encrypt data. There are some instances where the penalty might be slightly lower. It's 2% of annual worldwide turnover or 10 million euro. But can you imagine being fined 10 million euro because you didn't encrypt? Just to add some gravitas to this, Allen & Overy are a law firm that did a white paper and explained in these penalties. Clarifies the fines that companies will be forced to pay for failure to comply. So that's legislation. Another business driver that must be considered is industry regulation. We have PCI DSS, which forces companies, when they're dealing with credit card information, credit card holder user detail, that must be encrypted. In conveyancing, I mentioned about electronic signatures and these advanced electronic signatures. In conveyancing, it now says that standard electronic signatures are no longer applicable, are no longer usable, because they simply don't add identity of the user behind it. There's no authenticity. There's no data integrity. So in conveyancing, you have to now use a certificate, a digital certificate, that provides a validated signature of the user, where the user's been through a verification process with a certification authority or through a government eID program or from a bank, credit union and beyond. Such examples are the UK Land Registry. Their system now won't allow you to use an electronic signature, standard electronic signature. It will only allow you to use an advanced electronic signature. It says on this top line, Land Registry will not accept an e-document with an e-signature as a dispositionary deed for registration unless it complies with the provisions of the 2002 and 2008 rules. The 2008 rules say that you have to use an advanced electronic signature. Later we'll make these slides available, but there are 4 points that are going to cover what makes an advanced electronic signature when using a digital certificate, and these are the rules that are behind it. Electronic signatures are just not witnessed. They are a tick box to accept an agreement. They are somebody writing their name in an email or on a document. They are an image of someone's signature, but that could be placed there by anybody, and there is no identity behind it. Just like the UK Land Registry, the law in Scotland, the conveyancing laws, say the same. You must use an advanced electronic signature. You cannot use a standard electronic signature. Other business drivers include the old best practice. Best practice is following the highest levels of security because it's the best way to do things. It sets the highest level of standards. It's the reason why people go through ISMS, why people get ISO accreditations, but likewise why people use certified documents, why they encrypt transactions, why they use SSL on websites or TLS, why they authenticate devices, clients, machines, why they use identity access management and single sign-on, and why they use S-MIME to secure email, to digitally sign and encrypt email. Because it actually prevents phishing attacks. It helps to prevent phishing attacks, because if there's a verified identity behind it, then you would trust the source more than if it was just a plain email. Another business driver is risk mitigation. Risk mitigation is why people do audits, internal and regulatory audits. The protection of data. They will provide data authenticity within their system. They use secure connections to prevent intrusion. And they use domain controllers and digital certificates in bring your own device. In risk mitigation, we've got some examples of service providers that use such technology. We have a company called Digitry, a GlobalSign customer, that provide verified qualifications. So a student has gained a degree, for example, their accrediting body, the university, digitally sign with a certificate, an advanced electronic signature, that this qualification is genuine. Businesses all around the world use Digitry to access that information to prove people's qualifications are legitimate. We have Touch Tech Payments. They are a fintech, a secure payments and banking application set. And they have a mobile banking app that they sell to banks all around the world. And in it, it allows users to digitally sign credit agreements with their bank based on their verified identity using an advanced electronic signature. That's the future of where banking, we're talking both commercial but mainly retail banking, users going through AML and customer due diligence checks with their bank can now embed their identity into a digital certificate provided as part of an application to be able to digitally sign, so they don't have to go to branch anymore. You can gain credit, you can get a mortgage, it ties into the land registry, and it ties into the Scottish conveyancing laws of using such signatures. And we have Passageways, a board portal. Passageways are going to come up shortly. I have my colleague and associate Paul Stark here from Passageways, and he's going to go through how that helps when it comes to corporate governance. Another business driver is automation. It's one of the most key things. Automation saves money. It helps streamline services. It is the digitization process that everybody's seeking to do, the reason this show is even here. These digitization programs are going on across Europe. They're actually driven by government. The EU is driving it. Each local country is driving it. It's why we're seeing digitization of banking services, of IoT and beyond. And of course, the key element of this is the role that service providers play in this. No matter what level of service provider or the customer base, whether service providers are as a service providers or conventional service providers, utilities, banks, insurance companies, they have a customer base to serve in a digital form. It could be competitive edge, another business driver. Giving your service something that your competition do not have gives you that edge, that ability to gain share in a market. Could be the other way around. You could be closing the gap because competitors are doing something you may be not doing, but this type of technology allows you to do that. Another one may be because service providers, the idea is to keep somebody in your platform for all the things they need to do. And so rather than sending them outside of the platform to get a digital signature, to sign something, to do an action, you can keep them inside your system, encrypt, authenticate, add legitimacy to the service. And as I mentioned, we have corporate governance, an incredibly important topic for enterprises because this is actually what keeps their business safe at the highest level. And so I'm going to invite Paul Stark from Passageways up because Passageways are an international technology, board portal technology, and Paul will explain how they do this.
Thank you, Mike. Good morning. My name's Paul Stark. I'm from a company called Passageways. We provide board portals for use by boards and leadership teams. And I'm going to tell you how Mike's subject links into what my company does. So if you think about any type of organisation, board of directors or the board of trustees, be it not-for-profit, for-profit, public sector, whatever the case may be, they have to meet to make decisions. The meetings that they have are very important in the way that the organisation runs itself and also conducts its business. Corporate governance, for example, quite simply is reputation, how it polices itself and how the outside world sees it also. So there's a board process around that. So what we do is we provide a secure collaboration platform for these boards to be able to conduct their business. Much of that is done around the meeting, but also there's a lot of this about the process in between meetings. So, for example, the preparation. A lot of this is paper-based. These organisations, the boards within there, are some of the last areas to go electronic. A lot of the meeting packs have hundreds of pages of paper, and these directors are mobile. They're not often together in the same place, so they need a secure solution that will improve upon a paper process. So when someone is thinking about this, there is the challenges of the board meeting itself and the process in between, but there's also the challenge of the compliance that they need to meet. There might be some industry regulations about how they handle their data. There are corporate governance best practices. They've also got to think about the sensitivity of the nature of their board information. Quite often it's the most sensitive information you've got in a company. Can you imagine a FTSE 350 company talking about taking over a competitor? All that information is going through the board. So because they have to spend so long on this, they often spend 200 plus hours a year on board meetings. They have to make themselves more effective. And sometimes they reach the limits of being able to spend more time on this, so they have to get more efficient. Next slide, please. So a system like ours, what it does is it really takes them through an electronic process, software process, that's really going to allow them to deliver on all of these areas. So there's 4 particular areas, really all of them link in today. First of all, they have to make themselves more collaborative. So that could be just communication, it could be access to information, anything that's going into the decision-making process that's going to have outcomes, it's going to have an impact on the way they run their business. By making themselves more collaborative, they've also got to make themselves more secure. So first of all, they need to think about cybersecurity, keeping unauthorized users out of this. People who they don't want to have access into this system, not part of their organisation. But then above that, they've got to think about their user and information management, because even if you're an authorised user, you might not be able to do something with all of the information. Within organisations, you could have someone on one committee who can't see content of another committee. So they've got to think about how they separate that, but also how they control that information to make sure that people cannot take a copy outside of the portal and have a paper copy or an electronic copy under their full control. And then, of course, this all goes into corporate governance. So many of the factors of the 3 tiers go into corporate governance, but also how can they achieve the highest levels of corporate governance themselves. So coming to an example of how this fits into an advanced digital certificate, when a meeting is finished, there will be minutes of that meeting, and that becomes the legal record. There is a thing called a minute book, and the minutes of that meeting go into the minute book, and that becomes the legal record of what was discussed and what was decided at that meeting. If there's ever a dispute, it's the minutes that is going to be the police of the actions from there. It will be the minutes that a court of law or a regulator would look at. So when it's a paper process, what often happens is organisations, they can just type out the minutes and then enter them into the minute book. But often what they want to do is raise their standards. So quite often, what will happen is the chairman of the board will sign the minutes. So they have a signature to attest that, yes, these are the correct minutes. But that signature is done in the presence of a witness, normally the company secretary, acting as like a virtual notary. So it gives a higher level of proof and confidence that those minutes were correct. Now, to go electronic, how do we meet or even exceed those standards? And this is where the advanced digital certificate comes in. Now, within our solution, we do have an e-signature options where you can replicate a wet ink signature, but that's not an advanced electronic signature, it's just a standard one. So there, you're sort of dropping the standards because, as Mike said, there's no witness to that. So by bringing in the advanced digital certificate and the chairman using that to sign the minutes, that's giving the digital identity to that document and also the corporate governance standards. And even in some of the legislative areas, I work with some housing associations who sign documents to send to the land registry. Without the advanced electronic signature, they can't use my system to sign all of the documents. So to wrap up, because I think time is getting short, the digital identity that offers and also onto individuals is fundamental to my business to be able to show companies how they can raise their standards and how I can compete against competitors who have chosen not to go down that line and either have no solution or just a standard solution. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Paul. Okay, as time is short, just to say, to cover over, we've given examples of use cases that how the business drivers are addressed through PKI options. And this is what GlobalSign does, and we have many technologies using it. And so we're going to invite you over to our stand 1240. If you wish to talk about what we do, whether it's through IoT or whether it's through the solutions we have for service providers and enterprises, come and speak to us, please, and we'll explain more and answer your questions. This slide deck can be available because it contains certain resources that might be helpful, but I don't know if we have any time for questions. No, so if you do have questions, please come to us at stand 1240. It'd be great to speak to you. It's just over there, and it'd be great to see you. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for watching this GlobalSign presentation. For more videos on identity and PKI, follow one of the links on your screen. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel to keep up to date with the latest video content.